Okay, so I am going to chronicle my adventures with the Roland GR-300. My friend Dave from down in Sunrise, Florida, he's a rather noteworthy musician who's a composer and has released several albums, has worked with some really big name stars like Genesis, Tears for Fears, and Barbara Streisand and others, and is a rep, or is representing as an artist rep with IK Multimedia, as he reached out and told me about the Dremel's not being used on the GR, but he told me about his GR that doesn't work. His GR-300. Picked it up on eBay. I'm not going to ask him how much he got it for, but I know that these things go for a lot of money. And first off, noticed that it doesn't work. So one of the first things that I did was to start to troubleshoot inside, because I was noting that there was no 15 volt plus or minus 15 volt coming from the system to the guitar. And when I looked at the original cable, which I don't have in picture here, it had been spliced and rather poorly. So the first thing I did was to fix the cable, which is an easy fix because I just needed to get a 25 pin parallel cable, computer cable. It's the original cable is 24 conductor with a bare ground that also touches a wrap shielding. I was able to buy a nice 15-foot long parallel cable, printer cable, old school. Cut the ends off and then solder it to the existing socket. These things are very unique. These sockets, it seems like, to the Roland guitar synthesizers. So I replaced that, tested it, everything was good, and unfortunately, the multimeter I had been using was there was a problem with the fusing on the voltage. So I dug into the original guitar synth and was checking out all the outputs for voltage until I realized that my multimeter was toast. So I pulled out my cheapo ass multimeter and noticed I did get 15 volts coming out. So that's the chronicle. So the cable's replaced. At that point, I started going back to inside the guitar, at which point I noticed that these flexible printed circuit boards, they called them, from back in the 70s and mid to late 70s and early 80s, they get extremely brittle. So let's zoom in a bit. So what did I do? It cracked, it broke off, the tracings broke fully to halfway across. And so I used this stuff, high temp masking tape. It's a polyamide, and I brought the broken parts together and reinforced them on the back with the tape. Then with the soldering iron, I first scraped with a scalpel, and then with the soldering iron, I actually soldered the traces back together. The other one seemed to be okay. At least it tested fine, but I still went back and then I wrapped everything up with this polyamide tape. It's flexible, it's flexible as long as you don't wrap it. As soon as you wrap it, it's the rigidity actually gets much better. It's like taking a paper, like a piece of paper, and making a cylinder out of it. Becomes much harder for it to crumple. It takes a lot more weight, torsion before it fails. So I wrapped up all the way around, squeezed in between each of the new tracings that I just soldered together, which is a very delicate process. And then went back and tested, and it works fine. So put this back together inside the guitar, which connects up to, if you look at the board, connects here. And of course the front of the board is all the controls. So there's your 2 synth controls, your synth mix switch. So it's like it does synth only, middle position is synth and guitar, and then the bottom is guitar, and then there's the 4 standard tone and volume pots. Of course, everything is going through this one board, even the passive pickups. And it is a Les Paul style, but like a Strat body, but with a Les Paul style 2 humbucker and 3-position toggle switch. So now from the guitar, you have another ribbon conductor that comes from this guy. And as you notice, that ribbon conductor no longer there's no integrity there anymore. It's not working. So so what am I doing? This is going to be my instruction video as to how to take one of these things apart. Now what I've been doing is I've been heating up the soldering iron and going back, and I'm heating up whatever this material is. I was tempted to believe it was epoxy, but it sure doesn't seem like it. It's some kind of a contact cement, it seems like a glue. I'm heating it up to make it more brittle than it already is, and then I'm using, very gently, I'm prying away using the point of this, I'm prying away the stuff to expose the old ribbon connector. So this is the process. And then the ribbon connector is still connected to, it's still in the guitar itself, because there's the passive pickups are connected to it. And I will eventually pull that out, and then I'm going to replace this entire ribbon connector because this is a hex pickup. Essentially a series of old school, for anybody that remembers these things, if you remember cassette tapes or 8-track tapes, it's a sequence of 6 of these monophonic, simple tape heads. It was a brilliant design, actually, because the flux can be very focused on one string in one area without interfering on the others. The magnetic field is like this, whereas in a guitar, it's sort of it goes lengthwise down the length of the guitar, because the magnet is north and south this way, and so it's I don't want to say toroidal, but that's the only word that seems to come to mind right now. It's a transverse mount. This is a transverse mounting of these things, so that the flux goes this way, and with it being very small and focused, you can focus only on one in each string. Now when I was in college back in 1984, 83, 84, taking electronics engineering, and I was working with digital circuits and op amps. My first year, I was working with digital circuits, op amps, and filter circuits. And I recognized that these were just tape heads because, you know, my dad ran an electronics repair shop, and I used to get old stereo equipment myself, go there and fix things and replace the tape heads. And sure enough, these look like tape heads to me. And not very hi-fi tape heads, but they're tape heads. Anyways, though, so I was starting to work on the design, which was essentially use these things, set up. It was going to be slightly different from the GR-300 design, but it was essentially going to use the very first stage, which was to filter out down to the fundamental frequency, and then use a sequence of NAND and NOR gates to trigger MIDI values. So based on the frequency. So if it is essentially like a comb filter or a cascading fundamental filter, every time it reaches a certain frequency, like it would trigger that note value. And this is essentially everything up to the point where my cascading, like my ladder filter would come in. The GR-300 is that, and then what it would use from there is it takes the fundamental, and then it applies all of the modulations and has the VCO, VC. It's using the pitch of the string as the VCA. And it applies all because your guitar is being considered as the oscillator. And each string is its separate oscillator. So if you notice, like, this is a very interesting design because you can actually turn on or off your strings. It has a compressor, which, depending on how well your guitar is set up or not, it will equalize or level the string, the amplitude of the signal. But you can turn each one on or off, you can compress it, and then you can process it. And it will take and because you're taking the frequency from the filter, you can then tune it, you can add all sorts of oscillations, like the oscillator for LFO. You've got you can do chorusing by it'll duplicate the pitch, it'll duplicate the frequency from the string, and you can split it into two, and then you can do relative detuning, fine detuning, get chorusing effects, make it really thick. You've got your VCO, which will do the envelope, rise and fall, and of course the player does everything else. So this is what I'm thinking of. I've got to think of the four values. I can't remember. Anyways, there's four standard envelope values, like wave shape values, that you can do on a synth, on an analog synth. This only needs the two. And then you've got your attack. Well, actually, these are the four: rise time, fall time, attack time, and then you've got a sensitivity. So depending on how hard or how light the player plays, you've got various foot switches to invert the envelope, to do envelope modulation, turn on or off the pitch, and you can do duet, which is it unifies the two, the A and the B section into one signal. So, and these specific items here will allow you to do further tweaking real time on the guitar. All right, so there's the upshot. So as I learn more about this, will be, I'll take continue video, but this is the first. And I may be one of the few people who's got the patience, who's learning how to fix these things. So if you have any questions, if I don't know, I will learn and I will answer them. You can answer back this video. Thanks a lot, folks. I'm going to move on and continue on with my tasks here, and then I will show you intermediate steps and the finished product. Cheers.